Hello, viewers. Well, Overpass was revealed last year at E3. Something slightly different, off-road rock crawling game, taking your time, observing obstacles, almost like a puzzle driving game. But when we saw it last year, the game still needed some work. The suspension was a bit rigid at the time. It was very rough around the edges, and so the developers and Big Ben decided to hold the game back for another 9 months to work on it, polish it, and improve based on various feedback from the community. Now we see the final version. It's been released this week, and I'm joined here today by Kevin.
Hello.
And we'll be just having a chat about the game, really.
Yep.
So Overpass, then. I've put together a preview at the stage I'm making this, which the game is a sort of a love-hate relationship in the sense that there are moments where I'm quite calm, just relaxing, driving around, observing an obstacle. And then there are times when I get to a point and that flow I was enjoying just suddenly ends. There's no flow. I hit a brick wall and it annoys me. And I get frustrated very quickly. And then I just think, I just can't be bothered with this now. But at the same time, what keeps me going is the need to finish the level. I want to I don't want to leave it halfway. I don't want to just walk away and be defeated. And then after 5 minutes of trying to get up an impossible slope, I drive around the corner and there's an easy ramp all the way to the top. And I'm like, oh, blimey, I never saw that there. If I knew that was there, I'd have gone there in the first place. And it is quite funny. Or sometimes you need to really sort of recognise your vehicle and stuff like that. But Overpass then, Kevin, you've put together a review on it now, and you've been playing the PS4 version. Now, at the time we're making this, we might have some PS4 gameplay actually in the video that you guys are seeing at home, but I haven't seen it at this point yet. PS4 compared to PC, just in terms of the graphics that you've seen on my videos on the PC version, what do you think? I think you've played a little bit of the PC version as well. Yeah. What do you think so far?
I'm playing on the base PlayStation 4, and it's fair to say that the frame rate does struggle at times, particularly when you sort of kick up a bit of dust, get the particle effects. It does tend to struggle a bit, and the lighting I find is probably not as crisp as it is on the PC version. So pretty much the standard stuff we've seen over the generation, struggles in frame rate and maybe the lighting not looking quite up to par on the PC version. And I guess, where do we want to start? Do we want to start on the physics? Should we have a chat about?
Yeah. Let's talk about. The core thing is it's a physics simulation, isn't it? And I think that let's start there.
Yeah. So it's very much like what you said at the start. It's a game you can get on well with it and have fun with it until you reach a certain environment or a certain passage in the course that just drives you up the wall, so to speak. The physics, I would say, are quite limited in certain circumstances. So, it's almost like the physics want to put your vehicle on its side a lot of times. Should you hit an obstacle too quickly, or you lean in too much, it seems like the game just doesn't like you to do that. So it puts you on its side. I mean, you can alleviate a lot of that with upgrades, and some of the stronger vehicles tend not to sort of fall over, but there is a lot of that early on. There is a learning curve to this game which will frustrate many, so it's very much a case of you've got to have patience with a game like this. You can't just go in and expect to be speeding around these courses. Oh, I know better, put the throttle on. It just doesn't work like that. You have to carefully survey the environment, match the speed to the obstacle if you want to get through, and obviously there's a lot to do with the differential as well, which you need to utilize at times when it gets very steep, and it's very much a case of vehicle placement and matching the speed to the obstacle, I find, with this game, which is not always immediately intuitive. You feel like you have to go a bit slower than you would imagine you would have to navigate some of these obstacles, which can become a little frustrating at first, but once you sort of get over that initial learning curve, you can have fun with this game. But again, it's once you reach these impossible hill climbs, and there do seem to be one or two of them which are particularly brutal, which can provide a very frustrating experience. But Yeah, it's an interesting game, isn't it? An interesting concept. It's something we don't often see on the consoles, particularly, and it's just so unique. So it's very interesting to sort of get on and have a go at it. But I will warn people that you will have a learning curve. You will need to exercise patience and go in with a sort of open mind with this game if you want to get the best out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose when we talk about suspension movement, we're talking about the way the car or the ATV buggy
Mm.
bounces, and there's two layers to that. You've got the air in the tires, and then you've got the suspension itself. Now, on the early version last year, I was critical in a video back then because you'd be driving along the beach just over the sand, and the vehicle would hit sort of an invisible bump, and it would just break the vehicle and roll it on its side, and you've not even hit anything. Now, on this version, when you're on a high-speed section, the vehicle will sort of spin out. Seemingly, it becomes uncontrollable once it goes past a certain speed. It just gets into a tank zapper and spins out. So you rev to full speed, then you come off the power, then you go on full speed, and you come off the power till you get to the next object because it's just so unstable.
Yeah.
When you do get to an object, it's a combination of, as I say, the tires, the suspension, and not just the physics, but the visual movement. Everything you're doing in this is a visual cue to see when your wheel is on an object or not. It's very hard to get the feel in terms of fluidity. It never feels fluid, and even the controller input is very directional, turn one way or the other. If you look at the handlebars on the ATV, just a minor turn sees you turn quite a few degrees very quickly. There's not an analog degree of control there. It feels almost digital in the way it turns into something. So the game lacks overall fluidity. And as soon as it doesn't have that fluidity, that natural bouncy movement, then you have something which is not what it was originally. The concept would have
gamey rather than real world physics. And it's the same extends to the accelerator and braking and reverse inputs. They seem like you want to be very frugal on the pedal, but it seems like you're revving it and then you don't get much movement until you sort of get into the 7,000 RPM range, and then you get all that movement. So I would like to see more movement at low RPM, like 2,000-3,000, really to sort of really crawl up these surfaces. And there don't seem to be a lot of that going on, even with the differential locked. So it seems like a fundamental limit to the actual suspension movement, isn't it? There's not a lot of travel there, as you mentioned before. There's not a lot of movement, and you're lacking that sort of the springs are not really working, so you have this very stiff vehicle which as a result is very prone to landing on its side.
Exactly. That is why. It's because it's not bouncing or moving with the objects. If you imagine the vehicle had no suspension at all and it drives onto an object, well, then what's going to happen? It's just going to fall on its side. And so consequently, now that might be partly down to some game design in terms of upgrading your suspension, but having said that, it's not right. It's not. It doesn't start in the right place. So I think that in terms of their physics and their fluidity, they've got a long way to go to reach their concept. The concept is great, but I think I do find the vehicles very narrow. And I've looked at the vehicles in real life, and the wheels often look bigger and they're slightly wider. So the vehicles seem long and narrow. And another thing is that from the view you play at, which is generally behind the car for many reasons, or buggy or whatever, you can't see your rear wheels properly. They're cropped off the bottom in the viewpoint, at least for what I have on the PC version. The wheels have been cropped off. So you see a lot of my footage, you can't see the back of my vehicle. It's really important to be able to know what your wheels are doing. And the camera that you rotate round to see what's going on is a bit clunky. You have to sort of press the stick in and waggle it around a bit, and it doesn't go where you want it to go. And I think that the viewpoint in that area needed a lot of work as well. So, I think it's definitely a concept. It's definitely a concept that has some fun to it. I like the concept. I love the concept. I just feel that in terms of the physics structure, that they've not hit the target they were looking for.
You're controlling the differentials and the two-wheel, four-wheel drive with the D-pad buttons. The left stick is your vehicle turning, your right stick is the rider movement. So it's almost like they've run out of buttons for the camera. So we've ended up with this very awkward camera. So, I'd like to see maybe some options to change the layout, or some refinements, certainly in the controls there, because the the camera, when you want to pan around the vehicle, is fundamental, isn't it, to a game like this? It needs to be easy, it needs to be intuitive, and it simply isn't. So they've sort of missed a trick there. But going back to the stiffness of the vehicles, they almost seem to be quite top heavy as well, just to compound the general stiffness. So you're very prone to going on the side, and also when you get onto the side, you don't often spin back to your wheels. So it's almost like there's a magnet pulling you down at times. So it can provide many a frustration. But as I said before, with a more solid vehicle, the ones you unlock, they certainly do fare better. And obviously, as you get more experience with the game and approach these obstacles at the correct speed, you're less prone to going onto the side. But as we said from the start, it's fundamentally limited from the off, and that will frustrate many players. But if you do stick with it, there is fun to be had. And some of the obstacle courses, you can get up to speed and you can attack them with some speed. So there's a lot to this game. It's not just the hill climbs where you're crawling up the side. There's obstacle courses which they take point A to B, as well as circuit-based events as well. So there's quite a bit to this game. There's a fair amount to do in the career mode as well, which we'll touch on in a moment. But I think for a physics-based game, there certainly is limitations there, and it's a shame, really, isn't it? Because the geometry of the world is so good. The technology they have there is so has so much potential, doesn't it? There's so much going on with the geometry, which you don't often see in racing games.
Do you know, it's one of those games where you say, I wish I could sit with the developers and just take them out of the bubble, see what they're trying to achieve, and just make the minor tweaks that could help them get there. There's a lot of good stuff. I mean, let's talk about some of the good stuff. The geometry of the levels. The rocks feel like rocks. They have odd shapes. There's a nice feel to going over them.
Yeah, there's a solidity, isn't there?
Yeah. The
collision physics are pretty good, yeah.
The collision physics are good. The approach you need to all these rocks works exactly as you think it should. So the collision physics are working there. It's really just the suspension. So you're driving over these rocks, bearing in mind your suspension is very stiff. You've got that in mind when you're approaching them. But the actual environments themselves are, for the most part, very well modeled. They're well thought out. It is challenging. I watched a video earlier of people doing it for real, and people rolling down hills and all that sort of thing in their buggies. I mean, these are crazy guys, I'm going to do this for real. And it was the same thing. He couldn't get up a certain point, drove around another way and found a way up. So
I almost feel that any slight change in physics could upset the whole balance of the game, because these courses are geared towards a particular physics set. If you change those physics, then suddenly you might have to change the whole game, because it has to be challenging for the physics that exist. So I feel like if they made any fundamental changes, they may have to change the whole landscape of the game. Tricky situation.
You can start with a landscape. I mean, a landscape is a landscape. The landscape doesn't change because of physics. It's just the physics. But they might have to change some elements on the course. But on the whole, if it felt natural, I think it would work. I just feel the feeling of that it's just not a natural feeling. That's all there is. I mean, but I think in terms of a rocky environment, the world is what it is. You just have to build vehicles that work on that environment.
It needs to be challenging, doesn't it? But not too overly challenging. So you have to strike that balance. So it's always going to be tricky, isn't it, to get that right? Particularly if you are making changes to the physics here and there. It'd be interesting to see if there'll be any patches coming.
Well, the challenge is always you want to feel that you've made the mistake, not the game taking you out. And I think the problem occasionally feels like the game is against you. The game doesn't want you going up that way. No, you're not allowed. We're not going to allow that. And I think sometimes there doesn't seem to be a logical reason why certain times you can do certain things and others you can't. And certain times the vehicle rolls and you think, I thought I steered into that or whatever. And it annoys you because it doesn't feel natural enough. So I think, no, in terms of physics, we'll move on for that. But I think in terms of physics, they've got physics in there. There's a lot that works within the rigid sort of environment they have. I was getting better at the game because I was understanding how the vehicles handle.
Yeah.
I was getting my head around it and I was able to drive it, but I could never say hand on heart it felt real to me. No. However, I did find some enjoyment from it, and I think the more I enjoyed it, the more I just got better at the stages, really, because I recognised how to attack certain rocks and objects in the different vehicles. For example, the buggies, you tend to go side on and weave yourself, whereas the ATVs, you go more head on. You head for an object and you hit it and go straight. If you tend to go at an angle, you'll roll very easily on the ATV. So there's the quads are a different challenge, a completely different approach to how you would approach certain rocks, for example, on the two vehicles. But on to so in terms of environment, I like the environments. I think the only problem is they're deserted. They're deserted and they're lonely. And I feel like the zombie apocalypse has happened and mankind has died off. But luckily, you've got some fuel, you've got a couple of vehicles, and you're going to keep yourself entertained. And I think that's kind of my analogy of the world of Overpass. You're the last person on Earth.
Yeah.
And there's nobody there. And it's a very lonely feeling, Kevin. How have you found it?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a single soul at the side of any of the courses, so no cheering, no noise, no nothing at all there. I'm not sure how much environmental noise there is in terms of birds and wildlife. I'm not even sure they have anything like that. So it's very much you'd be hearing your engine and nothing else really. And you know, we I know it's a very strange game, isn't it? In that sense, it's I guess. Going back to the frame rate, perhaps that's why there's not a single soul at the side of the courses, because the frame rate does struggle in places on the base console. So, yeah, it's a strange. I guess it's a technical, decision that they had to do, because I guess going back to the geometry is so detailed and impressive that it's taken up a large chunk of the resources on offer. So,
yeah, I think so. In terms of atmosphere, I mean. The thing is that I get that with the physics, but there's no other vehicles there. It's not like they've got to calculate 10 different vehicles in a race, all with.
It's worth noting though, this is an indie developer at the end of the day that has very limited resources. So, I mean, visually compared to the previous titles, they've certainly moved on a step or two here. So it's impressive, and obviously the technology they have now is impressive. It's just it doesn't quite live up to its potential, although the potential is massive, isn't it, for a game like this?
Oh, there's great potential. There's great ideas there. I think that they've got a lot of objects and stuff they can build upon. If they were to make an Overpass 2, to go away, work on it, develop all the things that we've highlighted on the new consoles, next gen.
Yeah.
With the amount of extra RAM and the SSDs, they could render environments, they could add crowds, they could add a lot more sound effects. Obviously, the UI is almost non-existent. It's pretty much a development UI. It seems like they never developed it. There's no photo mode. There's no replays. There's not enough there to it in that sense. So, I think there's loads they could add to it. But it's a bit like Dakar. A couple of years ago, it was a great concept, but they weren't the guys to do the physics. They just didn't get the physics. They needed somebody there who really understood that side of things, and so they had at the time, these great notes and co-pilot notes. Great. I mean, they put all the work into that, and the physics almost an afterthought, last minute, really. So the game just wasn't that fun to drive. And I think it's the same here. The physics are everything. You want to feel your wheels digging into the sand and the car bouncing around. When you get to a vehicle, if you're in car, you can't see anything, so you have to drive it from third person. If you're in car, your stick doesn't look around. You can't look around the car or anything, or your buggy.
I will say that quad. The physics in Overpass are better than Dakar. So play Dakar, don't worry, they're not as bad as that. No. But can we just have a brief talk about the career mode, just to give people an idea?
Yeah.
So basically you have like a web of events in the career mode, and you take on like a dozen events, and it could be several sort of races or events to each event or collection of events. So you've got 12 almost like championships, I guess you could call them, and then several events per championship. So there's quite a lot there to do, and the idea is to make the top half of the split to qualify for the final event. And I've got to say, the AI do not hang about in this game. They put in some times, don't they? Some really tough times. You know, if you're struggling on a particular hill climb, you might find out the AI has done it 3 times quicker than you. So
Yeah.
it certainly is a game that, in a sense, has good longevity. In the sense that you have to really sort of unlock all the upgrades and various vehicles, and then purchase them and really sort of get to master the game. There are 4 difficulties actually on the career mode, so you do have the option to start at a lower class and work your way up, which is very good, I find. But I mean, I couldn't imagine playing the most difficulties out there, because my goodness, even the second of the 4 difficulties, the second easiest, is pretty tough. But there's certainly some longevity there if you have the patience to do it. If you want to start off at the first difficulty, unlock as many upgrades and vehicles as you can, and just work your way through it like that, you certainly will get many different hours out of this game. But yeah, again, it's a little bit on the limited side, I would say, but there's enough content there, there's enough courses there to get stuck into. So in that sense, there's a fair amount.
There's good content there. I mean, like you say, there's lots of courses in there, but it's as a budget game release, I think we wouldn't have a problem with it really. But it's a good concept. I just think they probably had about a quarter of the budget that actually needed to bring it to reality, and I think if they had obviously a lot more resource, they could really do something. I think sometimes it's frustrating when you have a game that like we've had a love-hate relationship with this game. I think it's fair to say there's a lot there that we've enjoyed, and there's a lot there that we feel it's not finished. It just feels like it's not finished in that sense. And so I think there's definitely something to work on, but it needs a real sit down and a rethink if they're going to make a sequel. They can't just knock out a quick sequel with some extra bits and pieces. They need to really work on it and develop those physics. So Overpass, I guess we haven't played online multiplayer, though I think there's potential for it to be fun online because of the whole randomness of it. I think anyone can slip off a rock or something can go wrong. And I like the idea of the randomness. I don't know how it works in multiplayer, if you see ghosts of the other players or if you're just on your own, because I bet it's just you're on your own and it's just timed.
That would be a shame, wouldn't it? Because it'd be interesting to see ghosts like falling off and struggling for grip. It could be quite chaotic. As long as there's no bumping into each other, of course. You need to have ghosts.
No.
Can you imagine?
Ghosts would be funny because you would just see bodies rolling down cliffs or something.
Yeah.
It would be fun. You probably won't, but I think there's potential there, and I will see if I can find anybody online to play it. But no, you know what? I think it's a game that had some potential. It's not met the potential it had. It's not a terrible game. It's a game that's in a niche, and if you like that kind of thing, you'll probably get some enjoyment out of it. But if you're somebody who likes a fast, fluid racing game, it's not going to be the game for you. It's an acquired taste, I would call it. What do you think, Kevin, to round up?
Absolutely. I mean, it's like you say, it's an acquired taste. It's very much a sort of slow and deliberate experience. Yeah, you will need a lot of patience for it. And like you say, those that are into that will get a lot out of this game. There's a lot there to get your teeth into regarding all the different obstacles to face and courses. So, and like I said, but you've got your hill climbs and you've got the faster paced obstacle courses as well. So yeah, it's okay. I scored a 6 out of 10. I think it has 1 or 2 issues, particularly with physics. Graphically, it looks fine enough. Sounds are pretty good. It's like we said, it's a very lonely experience, isn't it? And we just wish there's a little bit more to certain modes. And like we said, we're going to try and get onto the online portion and see how that is. But if you're into slower paced games, you're not frightened to try something different, I certainly would recommend Overpass. However, I would say wait for a sale, because at the moment, as a full price title, it sort of leaves a lot to be desired.
Absolutely. I mean, just to touch on the sound, the vehicles are okay given the gear they have. There's not enough environmental effects, and I find sometimes things are just silent when you should hear dust and stones moving about, and the water effects are quite repetitive and limited. But overall, the game it's okay. It's just unfinished. Like you say, there's a lot of features it doesn't have. It's very bare bones, and it's not quite meeting the concept that it was trying to outline. But either way, like you say, I think 6 out of 10 sort of pretty much covers it. And I guess that's it from our thoughts, viewers, on Overpass. Thanks for your time today, Kevin.
Yep.
And yeah, we'll play a bit more of it. We'll have some more gameplay on the channel, and I'll be playing through it. You might see the odd stream of me playing it. I'm not certain at the time I say this. We may have already had a stream by the time this video comes up, or we might not. We'll also be aiming to cover the Switch version in a couple of weeks as well, when that gets revealed, and obviously running a bit more on the various Twitter and Instagram. Do follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to us on YouTube. It supports what we do. Do say hello on the Team VV website as well. It's always nice to get people saying hello there in the comments. And that's it from us for now. There'll be lots more content to come on the channel, lots of Isle of Man TT content to come as well, besides other racing game news, views and podcasts. But that's it from us for now. As ever, more soon. Hello viewers, well thanks for watching the video today. Do like and subscribe, it supports what we do. Do become a YouTube member. YouTube Patreon supports all of our content you see on the channel, and of course lots of gaming from retro to modern games. I love it all in terms of racing action. So click on one of the two videos just there to find out more.